So there are a lot of preachers who are preaching Jesus but don't know Jesus.
Yes.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So if God was in heaven, how did he create heaven?
Welcome back to Solomon's Temple. I am Uncle Solomon. Good to have all of you here. Make sure you subscribe to the channel wherever you are. Good to have each and every one of you. In the first part of our interview with our special guest, Dr. Abel Damina, we looked at so many different issues. We looked at his genesis, how he started, just to establish sort of like his credibility, and just for you to know the man that has been on our YouTube and on our social media pages, raising issues that are very vital. And we did raise issues in that first part. And he's back again for a second part. This is a 3-part series. Well, we have Dr. Abel Damina still in the studio with us, where we are really digging deep and bringing out issues that I feel is really going to be a blessing to us. We had a discussion earlier on and said, look, hey, there's a shift. There's a revival coming on. Why? Because the truth is back in the marketplace.
That's
the
right.
truth is seeking for a place in our pulpits,
right.
in our churches. And God is seeking for people who would declare the truth. Thank you so much for joining me again.
Thank you, Uncle Solomon.
Yes.
Again.
They called you a madman.
Yeah.
I don't see a madman here, but I have to ask you,
Yes.
you know, so many other leaders,
Yes.
I mean, respected leaders that I respect,
Yes.
have called you names.
Yes.
It seems like they're even afraid of mentioning your name.
Yes.
Some called you the short man from Uyo.
Yes. Some call me rat.
They said you're a rat.
Yep.
They say you're a madman.
Yes. Some call me thief.
They call you a thief. You know, some don't even know how to address you.
Yeah.
Is there a fear, or is the truth now convicting so many of these false prophets and prosperity gospel teachers? Because we have a lot of them across the continent.
You know, Uncle Solomon, thank you for that. You know what the gospel has done, where I'm concerned, is as we began to bring in the principles of Bible interpretation, and very loud, it began to expose darkness. You know, in the book of Luke chapter 24, verse 25, where Jesus rose from the dead on the way to Emmaus, he met 2 disciples, arguably Cleopas and the wife. They were discussing the event of the past 3 days. And then they were saying, and these are guys that have been with Jesus for like 3 years.
Right.
And they were saying, we thought he was going to be the one that would bring political emancipation. You know, a prophet mighty indeed. They even thought Jesus was just a prophet. You know, and then they were talking about, and to make matters worse today, the woman went to the tomb and didn't find his body and all of that. And they were preaching Jesus to Jesus, but didn't know Jesus. So Jesus turned to them and he called them fools. Oh, fools, slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Ought not Christ to have suffered these things and to enter into his glory? That's to say, if you were reading, the word slow of heart is the word brados in the Greek. It means you are laid back. You're not engaging. You're not paying attention. And then he says, then if you guys were paying attention, you would have known that my death was part of the reason why I came as a substitute for man's sins. And then verse 27 of Luke 24, and beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded. Now that word expounded is key, because that's where you have the Greek word dimenua. It means to interpret symbols and signs, to cut across. So Jesus was the first person who interpreted the scriptures. He was the first person who interpreted Moses, the law, and the prophets. Now, what was the emphasis of his interpretation? The Bible says he expounded unto them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. So we say the Bible is a Christocentric material that carries with it a Christocentric message, a Christ emphasis. In John 5:39, Jesus said to the Jews, you search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, but they are they which testify of me. In John 1:45, Philip findeth Nathanael and said to Nathanael, we have found him of whom Moses in the law and the prophets did write, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, which means there's a bias to Bible interpretation. That bias is the Christ. The message is Christ, which means Moses pointed to Christ. All the prophets pointed to Christ. So it is Christ emphasized. When we began to make that emphasis, it began to expose falsehood. And when falsehood began to feel attacked, then, when people who are given to falsehood don't know how to get back at you with a superior argument, then they come at your person. Then they began to call me names, madman, rat, and all of that. All of that was to get at my person, thinking they would distract me from the issues. And I refuse to be distracted from the issues because it's not personal. What I'm doing is not personal. I'm not against anybody. Some of these people are people I know one-on-one. Some of them we've had with times of interaction. We've done ministry together. So it's not about persons at all. It's about the issues. Because the truth of the gospel is bigger than all of us. The message is bigger than all of us. And if we don't preach the truth, we'll produce false converts. If we don't preach the truth, we'll produce false believers. At the end of the day, we'll deceive a lot of people and send them to hell. So the truth must be preached irrespective of whose ox is God. It happened to Jesus. They called him names. They called him a wine bibber. They called him possessed with Beelzebub. So when they call me those names, I just feel like it's an honor to belong to Jesus' WhatsApp group. That's the way I see it.
It's some of the things that you have said, I could understand why they would get to that level. But for me, some of the benchmark of a leader is not to get personal.
Right.
And unfortunately, I've heard leaders getting personal with you. I cannot, because I disagree with you on an issue, I can never make it personal. I can never attack your person.
Truth.
And to be honest, it actually made me to question the character of some of the leaders.
Very true.
Because that's a reflection of the character of the person.
True.
He might have a 60,000-seater church.
It doesn't
really matter.
That's right.
But now we're seeing the character of that person.
Which is very important.
It's very important.
Very, very important.
And I hope and pray that people would really pay attention to that.
Right.
That they will pay attention to some of the ways that some of these guys are trying to retaliate.
Very true.
What they say. Because the character of a person is the person.
It is.
It's not how he prays or the miracles that he's done or whatever. And we have to get there. And some of the things that you've said, which I think rattle a lot of people, you've made statements like, the God is not in heaven. Even people who are not Christians would make it to heaven. You've made the big one, obviously, the tithing issue, and all that. Dwell on some of this.
Okay.
And because sometimes people would hear that, just a soundbite, and then they will
they
conclude that, no, that's the false teaching, But when you get to expatiate it, then people would understand better.
The truth of the matter is people need to understand that I don't teach single messages. When I take a topic, I do a series. Sometimes it runs to about 40 hours, 50 hours. I even have a teaching that's over 250 hours, my teaching on salvation. So bloggers who just cut sound bites, they mislead some of these people. And because some of these people are not studious, so they just take it and that's all. They don't bother to investigate and interrogate and say, okay, if he said this, what did he say before this and what did he say after this? Let me get the full gist. Many people won't do that. Okay? So they create a wrong impression and mislead people. But I always advise, go look for the They're all on YouTube. They are not, Now, when I said God is not in heaven, it was in 2016. I was preaching for House on the Rock in Nigeria. And then in the course of preaching, I just said, God is not in heaven. And the whole crowd went like, what? Then I said, Genesis 1:1. And the whole crowd went, wow, and then, but because it was a meeting and the emphasis was not on heaven, I just passed by it. I didn't emphasize it. But in our church, I did a full teaching on it.
Okay.
The word heaven there was the physical heavens. Okay, God is not in the sky. It's not in the physical heavens. God is in the heaven, which is what we call the euphorenios in the Greek. Euphorenios means the immaterial realm. So God is spirit. God can be in a physical location, like a physical person. His spirit is in the immaterial. And that's why the bodies that operate in the spirit realm are immortal bodies. That's why God is immortal. He's invisible. Okay. So, but there is a heaven reality, which is the immaterial. And that is where the believer is, the immaterial realm. Bible says Jesus has raised us up, quickened us, made us sit together with him in the heavenlies, in Christ, the immaterial. And that's the reality of the believer. And there are a lot of teachings I've done on that. They're all on YouTube. In Christ Reality Season 1, Season 2, Season 3, and Season 4 deals with all of that concept. Now, during the last conference I did, I said, God is not a Christian. And that caused a lot of ripple all over the world. How can you say God is not a Christian? And I said, you can't localize God in a religion.
Yeah. God was before Christianity.
Exactly. Christianity just started in Antioch in the book of Acts, not too long ago. All right. So God can't be a Christian. He's always been before any religion ever operated. And that's why God cannot be boxed in a religion. And I went further to say, if a Muslim in a mosque believes the gospel, hears the message that Christ died, he was buried, on the third day he rose again, and believes in his heart, right in the mosque, he's born again. In the shrine, a man that is a traditional worshiper hears the message in the shrine, believes the message, he's saved. Salvation happens within microseconds. God is not afraid of the mosque. He's not afraid of the shrine. He's not afraid of anywhere. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. He owns the whole universe. And so that's the premise from where I was coming. And I can tell you the truth. A lot of people that we have judged and said, these people cannot make it to heaven. We're just being judgmental. You don't know what God is doing in people's hearts. I said, like the thief on the cross. Everybody would have thought that guy is a notorious guy. He must have gone to hell. But they didn't know what happened within the last moments of his life when he said, when you go to paradise, remember me. And Jesus said, today you will be with me in paradise. So that's the premise on which I made the statement on God doesn't live in heaven. And I'm talking about physical heaven. But God lives in the immaterial reality called heaven, which is what the Bible teaches as euphorenius, the immaterial, because God is invisible. God is immortal, and he can't live in the physical because he's not a physical person. That's why in salvation, God became a man in the person of Christ because he needed a body to operate on the earth. He put on that body, put on humanity, came to the earth, died for man, and made a way for man and God to reunite. Okay, so in that incarnation, God became a human being and operated on the earth. But when Jesus rose from the dead, his body changed from mortality to immortality. That's why you don't see Jesus physically, because he lives in the immaterial realm. And the reality of it is that when you believe the gospel, he takes up residence in your heart.
One of the big issues is the issue of tithing.
Tithing, yes. So, like I was saying in my story, in the previous part.
Because you are a beneficiary of it.
Yes.
In your encounter.
Yes.
And some people would even be saying, so how did you try to do anything to restitute? Did you seek for apology?
People have said that too.
And all that kind of thing. But how did you get to that place? I mean, I totally believe in your explanation of it. I believe I'm a big believer in giving. But tithing in itself, the way it's done, in the current church in Africa, is totally not biblical. But for you, because you basically trying to put Nigerian churches and the African churches out of business by saying that people shouldn't, tithing is not biblical.
Well, the truth of the matter is, when light comes, people should be ready to put darkness out. I mean, why holding on to what is dead already? And the more they are trying to push this tithing, it's not working.
Yes.
Because people have seen
people
that.
People are still questioning it.
What is this?
Now,
the point is this. When I got into the Pentecostal charismatic and I started preaching, all we knew about money was tithe, and then seed, and then the prosperity thing came in. And then we were taught that if you don't pay your tithe, devourers will come. And we believed it because, and then we preached it, and some people who tithed had some results. So that authenticated it further. So we stayed in it. But when I finally began to study the Bible in the light of Christ, and I began to look into the scriptures, Old Covenant, New Covenant, and the ministry of today is the ministry of the New Testament, who has made us able ministers of the New Testament, not of the later. For the later kill it, but the Spirit giveth life. So if the ministry is the ministry of the New Testament, was there tithing in the book of Acts? Because New Testament started in the book of Acts. There was no tithing. Nobody preached it. Not Paul, not Peter, not James, not John, not even Jesus. Somebody said, but in Matthew 23, Jesus spoke about tithe. No, he was indicting the Pharisees. He said, you guys have left the weightier matters of the law. So tithing is of the law. Weightier matters of the law, like mercy, compassion. And you're emphasizing on the lighter matters of the law, which is tithe. He was rebuking them. He wasn't endorsing it. So which means tithing and all of that were matters of the law. Because Galatians chapter 4 verse 4, the Bible tells us that when the fullness of the time was come, God sent forth his son, made of a woman, made under the law. So Jesus operated under the law in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Because in Matthew 5:17, Jesus said, do not think that I am come to destroy the law. I am not come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. Now, the word fulfill means I have come to meet the demands of the law that men could not meet. So Jesus met the demands of the law and took the law out of the way. Because the law was not given to the world, it was given to the Jews who were on their way from Egypt to the promised land. Those are the people Moses gave the laws to, because the laws are not for Gentiles. But Jesus took it out of the way and gave us a new and living way.
Right.
So the New Testament started in the book of Acts. No tithing. What did they have? Generosity. People sold lands and houses
and they shared
brought
amongst
everything,
them.
and they shared to take care of people's needs in the church, which is the love work. That was the emphasis of the New Testament. So I began to teach this in my church. So tithing stopped and everything stopped. We couldn't afford to pay for our TV station, so we shut down our TV station. We couldn't even pay staff salaries, so we had to keep just a few, send orders away and apologize to them. And then I told my family, I said, guys, it's no more business as usual. We have to downsize. I began to teach them contentment, because that's what the gospel of Christ brings.
Right.
It brings contentment. The other gospel brings greed, avarice. You want to get more. The more you get, the more you want to get. The more you get, the more you want to get. And like I've always said, all the prosperity preachers are the only beneficiaries of that gospel, because everybody gives to them and they give to nobody else. They keep collecting. And even if they give, it is because they intend to use that as a bait to collect a bigger one. So it's a selfish gospel, and that's not the gospel Christ brought to us. The gospel Christ brought to us is that, he that loveth his life shall lose it. He that loseth his life shall gain it. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of things he possesses. That's the gospel Christ brought to us. He said he has died for us, leaving an example for us that we should follow in his steps. For the Son of Man came not to be ministered to, but to minister and give his life a ransom for many. And then Paul will say, seeing that Christ died for us, henceforth we also ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. That's the New Testament. Okay, but in the tithing team, the tithing message is all about give. And the man of God keeps collecting it. And then they scare you with fear and manipulation. If you don't pay your tithe, things will be tight. If you don't pay your tithe, devourers will come. If you don't pay your tithe, your business will collapse. If you don't pay your tithe, and out of manipulation, people in fear are paying tithe. And I did that in my church. But watch this. When I began to teach the truth, everybody in church stopped tithing and stopped giving. So I went to God in prayer and I said, God, is there something I have done that is not right? And then the Lord said to me, they never gave to me.
Why were they giving?
They gave to their fear. They were not giving to God. They were giving to the fear. So when they discovered there's nothing to fear anymore, the true intent of their heart was exposed. They never give again.
So there's a lot of fear transmission from the pulpit on a Sunday morning when talking about giving and tithing. There's a lot of fear that is transmitted to the hearts of people. You cannot
get it from the people if you don't inflict them with fear.
So fear is a major element around this whole prosperity
gospel. That's what
gospel.
The prosperity gospel sells. It thrives on fear. You don't sow, you can't get. And it's character assassination on God. Because God now is projected as a businessman.
Right. It's a transaction.
Yes, a transactionary gospel where you have to give to get. And then even the prayers they pray is transactional. You sow, you can't give a prayer request without money. You must put money on it. Because God will not answer the prayer if there's no money attached. So it's still part of the scam.
Right.
I call it a scam.
It's a scam, start to finish.
That's what it is.
A lot of them are scams.
It's a scam. So, and the gullible followers who don't know better think when you speak about it, you're being envious of their pastors. But, their eyes will open eventually.
Right.
And they will come to terms, because no matter how long falsehood lasts, the truth will overtake it eventually. So we will not be bullied by their reactions and stop saying what we know is the truth, because eventually they will apologize to us. I've been saying it for years now, that all these preachers attacking us, they will apologize to us.
There's an apology. Let's dwell on that.
Okay.
There's an apology that came from Pastor Enoch Adeboye of Redeemed Church, Christian Church of God, just a few days ago.
Okay.
Apologizing for saying that from the pulpit to millions of people that if you don't give your tithe, you're not qualified to go to heaven. You're not going to make it to heaven. So now he's come out to apologize. And I was checking it out on social media, and some of the conversations around there, your name was trending, and some of the conversations around there was like, hey, no, you must go and apologize to Dr. Abel Damina. Have they tried to reach out to you in any way? Because they do owe you an apology.
I'm trying to stay away from that conversation.
No, we have to. Now, we have to dwell around
that. The truth of the matter is, when I first heard him say, if you don't pay your tithe, you will not go to heaven, full stop.
Yeah.
I screamed.
Wow.
I screamed from my pulpit. I said, I said, you people say we are attacking Christianity. You people say we are attacking the fathers. Okay, you people say we are preaching a gospel that make people sin because we say what Christ did was complete. And you have not yet called out somebody who said if you don't pay tithe, you will not make heaven. I think that's the first person you people should be calling out, which means tithe replaces Christ. The Bible says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, not whoever pays tithe. So I got loud on that. And people's eyes began to open. So when he apologized, for me, that was a step in the right direction. For me, that was something, that was a statement that was very weighty, at least for whatever is what.
Yeah.
People are able to know that, okay, there is truth in what I said and other people have said concerning the tithe. Yeah. Tithe in no way is a prerequisite to anything in God. Yeah. In no way at all. Somebody said, what about Malachi chapter 3? Well, Malachi chapter 3 was not written to you. It was written to the priests who were receiving tithe, but they were not paying the tithe of tithe. So Malachi said to them, you guys, you priests, you are cursed with a curse. It wasn't given to us. But even if it was given to the Christians, Galatians 3 eradicates Malachi. Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law. Being made a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree, that the blessing of Abraham might come on the Gentiles, that we might receive the promised spirit through faith. Christ has sorted all that out. So that's why in the New Testament it says God loves a cheerful giver. The New Testament says, if a man giveth according to what he has, it is acceptable. There are no hard rules on it. It's just generosity. And I always say this, when you see Jesus, money loses value. When you really see Jesus. Jesus is on a donkey to Jerusalem. And people saw Jesus on the donkey and began to bring out their jewelry, their gold, and they put it on the ground. Because you can't really see Jesus and money. You cannot serve God and mammon. But you can serve God with mammon. When you see Jesus and you see his love, you see what he has done for you, his grace, his mercy. You want to promote what he has done for you so other people can also benefit from it. So generosity is natural. I always say to people think I preach against giving. No, I preach against transaction.
Yes.
You cannot be a child of God and not be a giver. For God so loved the world that he gave. If it is in God's character to give, it means if you're born of God, in your DNA is the desire to give, but not manipulated giving, not fear-based giving, not transactional giving, but giving out of generosity, expecting nothing in return. Somebody says to me, so what is the benefit of my giving? The benefit of my giving is that when I give, what I gave for is done. If I gave for you to go to school, you went to school. That's my reward. That through my giving, you went to school. So the beneficiary of my giving is not me. The beneficiary of my giving is the person to whom I gave it to. And that's my reward for giving. So, and that is shifting the whole narrative. It's shifting it. And we're going to get more louder because that whole thing has to give way. Let me be honest with you. There are pastors in Africa. If you take giving money, tithing out of ministry, they will no more do ministry. I can tell you that for free. They will get out of ministry because some are in it as a business. They see like, okay, now, I am through with school, no jobs in the secular world. God has called me. Then they start their church without even sound Bible training. They begin to abuse scriptures, teach scriptures out of context, twist things around. Some will say, I'm a prophet. I'm beginning to see visions and all that. And they use that as a means of making money. Let me tell you this, Uncle Solomon. If I never came after the tithing and the transactional gospel, nobody will persecute me. Nobody will attack me. The attacks really started when I started talking against the transactional gospel. That God is a father, he's not a businessman.
So why is that?
Because that is what many people are in need for. It's a whole industry.
A lot of your friends?
Well, my friends, some of them don't want to talk to me anymore, but I don't. They didn't call me, and when I leave this world, I'm not going to go to them.
And a lot of people that you know, because I mean, you know,
I lost quite, but I made up my mind that I was ready to lose, because Jesus said, "If I am your Lord and I was persecuted, if you preach, you'll be persecuted." Now look at it. When I was preaching the transactional prosperity gospel, nobody persecuted me.
Yeah, you were loved
Everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I can call names, all the big names.
Yeah.
I was hanging out with them.
Invite you
everywhere.
Come preach.
The moment I started preaching, Christ is enough. Christ is more than enough. The death, burial, and the resurrection as my emphasis. Then persecution started coming. So which means I'm in the right path. Because if Christ was persecuted and I'm preaching and I'm persecuted, I must be. And I've said to preachers, if what you're preaching does not attract persecution, re-examine the content of your message.
You're throwing it too much there.
Yes, if it does not attract, if you're not persecuted for what you're preaching, you need to go back and re-examine the content of your message, because you can't be holier and better than Jesus. Jesus was persecuted. The 12, how did they die? Some of them were butchered, some of them for the gospel.
Crucified,
and then you
down.
are preaching gospel and you're buying cars, jets, you're living big, you're
Everybody
having a good life, people love you. Everywhere you are a star. Something doesn't add up.
No way.
Something doesn't add up. If they were persecuted for this same gospel, people died for this same gospel. Missionaries came to preach to us and died for this same gospel. The rich left their wealth to come and preach this same gospel. And you are preaching it right. These symptoms, all of these characteristics will be seen around you. Persecution, rejection, attacks, blackmails. People will come out against you because Satan will not fold his hand, and what you do in the right thing, he will attack. So if you're preaching, if you're a pastor, or a man of God, or a woman of God. And I think if you're watching this broadcast, wherever you are, get more pastors, as many pastors, especially young pastors, and believers who have been disgruntled, people that are put out of church. Let me tell you this, on my way to South Africa, I stopped by, somewhere, because I did a connection flight. When I got in the lounge, a lady just saw me, walked to me and said, "Dr. Damina," and I said, "Yes." She may be watching this. She said, "I wish I listened to you before I left Christianity." I said, "I've just been telling my husband that I wish I listened to you before I left Christianity. I'm no more a Christian." I said, "Why?" She said, "These things you are preaching and exposing now were the things I questioned and nobody answered. So I felt Christianity is a hoax, is a scam." I left. But now, then I started listening to you. I'm not a Christian, but I don't stay away from listening. And I want to keep listening. And I want us to establish a contact. I'm a journalist, she said. And then I gave her my number. And then, we started chatting and all that. But the point is, I've come across many people. Uncle Solomon, I can tell you this for free. Many all over the world, even Muslims, who said, in Islam, we know that there's Christ, but we don't have teachings. So now we're hearing you teach Christ, Christ, Christ. We're interested. So we follow you because we want to really know about this Isa, this Christ. We want to learn of him. And a lot of them are following me. And they say, I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm learning Christ from you. And people are coming, even traditional worshippers, even people that are called atheists. They are coming back to say, questions we asked in church and nobody answered. What you're preaching is answering my question, so I want to hear more. Because Jesus is the desire of all nations, all men seek him. And if we preach him well, the whole world will come to this knowledge.
The voice and presence of Dr. Abel Damina, the state of the African church, the damage caused by the prosperity gospel, the prophetic movement gospel, which have produced a lot of scammers. But today we call them apostles, prophets, bishops, sadly. We're here at the Rise Studios in Randburg, Johannesburg, South Africa. This is the end of the part 2. We'll move straight to the part 3 of this special interview. Join me.